Hello, National History Day students. This video is designed to help you organize your National History Day projects. Specifically to North Lakes Academy, this will also help you work on check-in number 3 and check-in number 4, which really dive into some of the details outside of your main topic regarding what you're responsible for finding. So this chart in front of you here is a graphic organizer provided by the National Office of History Day and also provided to our affiliates in Minnesota. And for those of you that are experienced with History Day, you might notice that it looks a little bit like a standard exhibit board. That is definitely intentional. That's because when History Day started in the late 1970s, early 1980s, exhibit boards were oftentimes the primary, if not the only, method of presenting National History Day topics. Now, as time has passed and technology has become more relevant and easier to use and more accessible to permit interviews and video recordings and other multimedia sources, it is still the most popular category, but regardless, this is the argument has always stood for National History Day that no matter what topic, no matter what theme, any topic makes for a good exhibit board. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce to you this model that I've designed over the past few years, or I've worked with in the last few years. And there's a working metaphor for a quality National History Day product. And it is that of building a fire. And every fire comes with 5 different stages. There is the kindling section, which in National History Day we call the background. There is the build-up section that we will, for our purposes, call the smoke section. There is the heart of the story, which is your primary topic, your primary event, and that is the fire portion where your fire is burning the hottest. And then we have the short-term impact section where the fire is still burning, but it is in a ember stage or a coal stage. And then we have the long-term impact, which is the ashes stage, where the flame has now officially gone out and you are left now with a dormant fire. Yet everything has been changed by everything that came before it. So, using that metaphor and adding them all together, the last piece of a quality History Day topic is your thesis statement. Now, to be a little bit more specific, every History Day project comes with 3 really critical pieces. First of all, we have secondary sources. Secondary sources are critical because they help us build a bigger context. They help us look at the events you're studying outside of the moment that we're standing there and then we're in there and we're watching it happen. It also gives us the benefit of time and future events to better analyze why our topic mattered, why our event mattered. Remember that common secondary sources and primary sources, for that matter, are defined by time and participation. And secondary sources are typically created by people who are not alive during the time period or did not witness the event firsthand. And common sources include textbooks, biographies, documentaries, novels, other various items. Most websites are secondary that offer, a bigger picture, an interpretation of what happened at a different time period. Then, of course, History Day quality products have primary sources. These are harder to find, and they are just as critical as secondary sources because they are closer to the event. Primary sources, good examples include diary entries, letters, government documents, correspondence, photographs, newspaper headlines, autobiographies, people who are either writing about an event because they were there and they witnessed it, or these are potentially artifacts that were created at the time the event was occurring. And then, of course, another piece of a quality History Day project is speaking to the annual theme. For the sake of this video, we are not going to speak to the annual theme for this year. We're going to try to use this video from year to year. But in any case, every quality History Day topic has to have the theme deeply connected. Now, when it comes to choosing a quality History Day topic, you have to start at the heart of the story. Now, I'm not going to spend time talking to you about how to pick a quality topic. Suffice it to say, your topic needs to demonstrate a couple of pieces. Most importantly, that it had an impact, that history changed as a result of whatever was going on during your event. If it was something very interesting, very fascinating, very unique, but you can't really put a finger on what changed as a result, then it potentially isn't a very good History Day topic. A good example that comes up a lot is that's hard to prove are topics like Anne Frank's diary, because she had so little knowledge of what was going on in the moment. That doesn't mean that it's not historically significant, it most certainly is, but it might not just necessarily fit for a quality History Day topic all the time. In any case, when you start in the heart of the story, you have to answer a couple of pretty critical questions. First of all, what were your actors, meaning the people involved or the groups, standing up for or against in history? We have to show that intent. Why were they doing what they were doing? Also, what specific actions did they take in the critical moments? When you find yourself in a heated situation, remember, back to the fire metaphor, small actions can have dramatic effects when emotions or tensions or time are running short. And last but not least, what did they accomplish by taking these actions in the immediate? Everything within the heart of the story is happening in the moment. You save the bigger analysis for later. You really want to focus on the different sides. What different groups were involved and what were their perspectives? And then when you broaden out, you need to start moving away from your heart of the story, out of section 1. And I'll bring you first to the buildup. Notice the color correlation between the buildup section and primary sources. The buildup section is going to heavily rely on primary sources because the buildup is a section that happens in the months and the years leading up to the heart of your story, meaning that the people who played a major role in the heart of your story are probably alive, and they probably are acting, or they're getting ready to act. And so the point here is to figure out how people got into the position to do what they did in the heart of the story. How did they get into power? How did they get into a position of influence? How did they get to the place that the heart of the story occurred? And one of the biggest things that you're going to speak of in this piece is related to the theme, meaning how did the major actors position themselves to be able to take an action? And as evidence, you are most likely going to have 2 to 3 pieces of evidence to help demonstrate your answer. Generally speaking, they're going to be primary. You will certainly have some secondary sources, but you really want to capture what the attitudes were of the people who were involved. And then you go into the short-term impact. Again, intentionally, the build-up and the short-term impact are colored similarly along with primary sources. That's because the short-term impact is often going to connect very directly to the build-up, because you're going to be talking, again, about the months and the years, this time following the heart of your story. And as a result, what we're looking at here is the people who were in the buildup of your product. What are they doing now? What are they doing now after your heart of their story is over? How are they reacting? What additional decisions are being made? Are there new actors that are entering? Did everybody survive the heart of the story moment? And this time, regarding the theme, you're answering the question of how did the opponents, the public, the news, governments, etc., all these other different groups react to the actions in the heart of the story? And again, you're going to find yourself using 2 to 3 pieces of evidence, typically primary sources that will help you understand this. So think of the heart of the story as the core, at the core of your product. And we have to wrap that core in primary sources. And then we back out a little bit further, and we go to the background section. Again, the background section is colored by secondary sources, and it is super critical for us to recognize that the background section takes a bird's eye view. Most likely, your background section is going to speak to 25 to 75 years before the heart of your story occurred. This is also important because oftentimes the actors, the major characters, aren't necessarily alive, or they are not necessarily involved. This is not a place to talk about the childhood of your character. This is not the place to put a necessarily a timeline in. This is a place to answer a theme-related question. Specifically, why was action on this issue needed in the first place in history? What was there to change? What issues were there to change? Was it a culture of racism? Was it a conflicts that happened a long time before that might have led to a future conflict in the heart of the story? What things were going on that really kind of set the stage and gave all this other stuff something to change? And again, you're going to have evidence, 2 to 3 pieces of really good evidence that demonstrate your answer to that question, mostly going to be in secondary resources. Sometimes you'll be supplemented by primary resources, but don't forget to include the theme, and don't forget to ensure that you answer the question and give us an idea of what does society look like and what might change. When did those things change that were in the background section? They change in the long-term impact. After everybody who's involved in your build-up, heart of the story, and short-term impact are gone or no longer as heated as they once were in the ashes phase of your fire, 25 to 75 years after the heart of your story occurred, what was going on and what looked like, or what did this issue look like now? Specifically, what effects were still being felt, and how did the problem get solved? The problem being, theoretically, what was located in the background section. So you see there are kind of this kitty-corner relationship. Background and long-term impact are closely tied together. They should almost be a mirror. And short-term impact and build-up are, again, closely related, and they're going to be kind of a mirror. You're going to see opposite back and forth between those two pieces, a balancing element, if you will. And the pivot point, of course, is the heart of the story. And again, you're going to have 2 to 3 pieces of evidence to help you demonstrate your answer. Mostly secondary sources and a little bit more beyond that. A couple of things to keep in mind. The theme, as you can notice, should appear in every part of your product. It just has to. It has to be clear that whether it's conflict and compromise or turning points in history or any other type of a product, individuals in history, revolution, reaction, and reform, you have to find ways to work that theme in every section of your product. And you have to ensure that you're using primary and secondary sources in every phase, just recognizing what the best ones are and how you're going to highlight them. And that's because when we take these 5 sections together, when we take the heart of the story, wrapped in primary sources, and then wrapped again in secondary sources, and then wrapped again in the annual theme, we have 5 sections. We have the background, we have the build-up, we have the heart of the story, the short-term impact, and the long-term impact in chronological order. And if we take those, and we take the most important pieces, let's say 15 to 20 words out of each section, and you add them together, you have your thesis statement. And if you have all these pieces in a product, whether you're doing an exhibit board or a website or a documentary or a paper or a performance, you're going to have a quality argument. If you demonstrate change with sources and you speak to every different aspect of your product, you're going to have a successful product. I sure hope that this model helps you understand the most critical pieces of National History Day. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me or your local National History Day representative. Thanks so much for using this resource, and good luck having fun with History Day.